Welcome to 216, a link to the Past Randomizer podcast. I am your host, Free Agent. Today on the show, we've got Telethar. Had a great conversation with Telethar. Excited to get to it. Gonna make the intro quick. Not a lot going on. Tark admin applications are all in. Voting is happening. Wednesday is the last day to vote. I think 9 a.m. Pacific, so noon Eastern. We'll see who gets elected and where Tark goes from there. League signups just opened for 2 weeks this time. So you got plenty of time to register. I know a lot of people are excited about League this year. Really helps that they kicked ass with the mode selection. And I know people are really looking forward to the playoffs this year as well, being all co-op. That's going to be really big. And I know of a few invitational teams that are returning that didn't play either last season or the season before. It gets me very excited. So it doesn't mean that they're going to be guaranteed the invitational spot. It all depends on how many teams from the invitational drop out. I know a couple. There'll be room for a couple of teams to get called up. The competition is going to be fierce, though, for the call-ups, I think, this year. Just a lot of good returning players. I'm excited. I'm excited for that. And Cross Keys Swiss is about to wrap up, so that's going to be interesting to see who makes the top 16 there. What else is happening? 216 Fantasy Football is going to be kicking off again in September. Football is just around the corner. I watched the Hall of Fame game, which it's not good. It's not good football, but a lot of people watched it. And that's just because football fans are jacked to have football back. So really excited for the Seahawks this year. Mariners are doing really well. One of the hottest teams in baseball. Just lost a series to the Orioles, though. A really tough series. Orioles turns out pretty good. So, M's making a push for the playoffs. Excited about that. Been playing a little bit. That's been fun. You won't see me on the ladder, but I might join a pickup race here or there, doing some asyncs. I'm just really excited for League. So it's 2 weeks of registration, and then I'm not sure exactly the timeline. Usually a week or two to figure out the divisions, and then we'll be getting a reveal stream sometime in September, I think. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to League this year. I think there's going to be a lot of really strong, fun competition. Always a big fan of co-op stuff. And the fact that, again, the playoffs are all co-op, I think is just a home run. So today on the show, Telethar. I've talked a lot about Telethar on this podcast in the past. I mentioned that in the beginning of the interview. Just a big fan of the guy. Really am a big fan of the way he approaches the game, the way he has, kind of come onto the scene and just performed really, really well. There's a humbleness to him, but he's still very competitive. I really like that. We talk a lot about his approach and how it's very different than my approach. And I'm always drawn to people that have a different approach to the game, the way they tackle the logic or the way they just play in general. It was a really, really fun conversation. We laughed a lot and had a really good time. So I think you'll enjoy it. So let's get to it. Here's Telethar. All right, Telethar, super excited to have you on the show. I don't know, maybe outside of Zelga, of someone who's been mentioned on the show more than you. I think with how quickly you kind of came up and rose to, well, you brought your game level up really quickly, at least apparently to me and a lot of other people. It was just like remarkable. Like, wow, this guy's really, really good. How did he get so good? In fact, you were so good so quickly that I thought you were German. Turns out you're not German. You're actually in Washington State with me. So, yeah. First of all, thanks for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
So, in fact, you are not German, or you might be. I don't know what your lineage is, but you are an American in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
The reason I thought you were German is just because there's a lot of German players, and they get really good. And if you're not in the German community, then you might not know who they are. And Telethar could be a German name, I think. I don't know. Trying to find a way out of that situation.
Yeah, sure. It totally makes sense.
So, you've had a really good run here in the last year or so with winning the league with OK Dudes. I know GGW's called you like the biggest nerd in Rando as well, because I see you posting a lot of stuff as well. Like your breakdown and your insight into like a logic and routing and stuff has been really cool to watch in the last year or so. So I'm excited to hear your story
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any clue. When I break down things and say things, I'm outside of like the logic is X. I know when I'm saying that's true, but like I make a lot of statements about this is the right way to do it. You're probably doing this wrong. Like those are all just my guess, and like I'm constantly debating myself. So
Sure, but I think you come at it with logic, right? Like it's not just necessarily a feeling. Like I feel like there's different people. The way they play this game is different. Some people are very logic based. Some people are gut based. I feel like I'm more gut, and it feels like you're probably more logic. Like you like to look at how the game works and try to figure out like what's going on. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm very logic based in everything I do.
Yeah, I think
not just rando. It's a mindset.
Sure, totally. And I think there's a rise of that, at least that I've noticed with like you and Structural Mike are two of the bigger proponents of like, let's kind of take emotion or stuff out of it and let's just kind of look at it logically. Very Spock-like. I don't know. It's interesting. It's just so different than the way I approach stuff. So I'm always curious to hear other people's perspective on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that rando, like 1v1 competitive rando racing is actually a very weird thing in the sense of like what you're actually supposed to do if that ever develops all the way to the end goal,
right? Where
people are just going to be skipping completely nonsense things, just all over the place. Because like the way I describe it is that like if you imagine in some theoretical world you're facing an exact copy of yourself, and it makes all the same decisions you do, but that copy of yourself also decides to skip Link's house chest, you're going to lose almost all the time by like 3 seconds to that guy.
Yeah.
So like there's skips out there that people aren't doing that probably should be happening. What exactly those skips are, I don't know. But like people need to be playing very unhinged.
Sure. Well, let's take one for example. I think you and I watched, it was Structural Mike versus, was it Jesse in 80 keys or cross keys? I think it was 80 keys. And Mike got to...
It was Mr. Ed.
Was it Mr. Ed?
I don't know. Mike played Mr. Ed and I'm playing Jesse, so I'm trying.
Okay. It was just a match recently where Structural Mike skipped the Meyer cutscene chest.
Yeah, that was it.
And I was in chat. I think Ari was restreaming it. You were in chat and some other people were in chat. And I didn't understand the skip. Like it was still early enough to where I feel like you just clear it, even though he didn't have the 3 keys and the bow was there. And not only was it the bow there, it was the actual logical bow that the seed ended up wanting you to get because the other one was in GT. And I wouldn't say we debated, but I think we had a healthy conversation about like, what's the proper choice there? Like, I didn't understand Mike skipping it. And I think you and Mike, Structural Mike, have a very similar way of approaching these seeds. So
yeah, I think that skip was my influence. I'm a big fan of skipping that check.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the way I see it is, what are the chances that you're going to have to do this check? So one thing you're weighing is, just that it's garbage, like just straight up skipping it, even if it was in logic. And like, it's a pretty garbage check to do. Like,
right. It takes forever.
It takes forever. Like unless there's something there, you're trading off doing like 4 other checks instead of doing that one. Like, you're not trading it off, but you're going to be late to the next 4 checks. So how often have you lost a race because it's lost by, 20, 30 seconds? And then like, you don't pinpoint it on, oh, I shouldn't have done Meyer cutscene, but like, that's a thing.
Sure.
If you cut a minute off of your time every race, that's a lot. Like there's a lot of races that swing because you just suddenly have a minute because you just arbitrarily decided to skip that check. So that's part of it. And the other part is, what are the chances that I need to do this? Because it could very well just be locked by GT access.
Sure.
And like, and then, do I need to do it because it has a pendant big key or a castle tower key, or like, there's still things that it could have, even if it's behind GT, but it just you all got to make that decision and be like, on the fly, decide, oh yeah, I'm not going to do it, or you do it. And like, you can't be too predictable about any of your decisions either, because if you're always doing the same exact skips every time, like I said, your opponent can just copy you, except do Link's house.
Sure. Yeah.
So, like, you have to mix things up. It's some sort of probability model that you just kind of gut feel and decide based on the situation.
Yeah, I think what is interesting about runners like you and Mike are the fact that you're able to make those decisions without allowing it to affect you, really. Because I feel like me, who's again more like gut based, like I'm just going to go with what my gut thinks. And sometimes it works, but a lot of times it doesn't. And it feels like when I get burned by something, I hold on to it. Whereas if you're using logic, it feels like, no, that's just kind of the way it works, right?
No, for sure. Yeah, like you need to make skips if you're going to win consistently, because like I said, like these checks, 40 seconds here, 60 seconds there, big Eastern Big Key chest, left side swamp, Mire cutscene. You skip those 4 checks and you've cut like actually 4 minutes off of your time in every seed.
Mm-hmm.
And like you probably shouldn't skip them every time. There are scenarios where you probably need to do them, but like the percentage of seeds where those checks actually have something useful is pretty low. And like,
sure,
if you're going to be playing someone who's doing those every time and you're skipping them every time, you're probably going to win 80% of seeds that those things aren't progression.
Mm-hmm. I think it comes down to not letting the results affect you. Does that make sense? Like if you're very results oriented, I think like Hera Basement for a long time, I felt like I kept skipping Hera Basement no matter what. And I'm like, well, it wasn't there. It was there last time. It's not going to be there this time. Guess what? It was there. And then I was like, oh, 2 times. It's not going to happen again. It happens the 3rd time. And statistically, like it's such a small sample size that it feels like, yeah, that's way too often. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like just 3 random chances, right? Like I feel like I speak for a lot of the community because we approach the games with like, oh, it's out to get me. These seeds are out to get me. You know what I mean? Like when in actuality, it's all just, it's happenstance if it happens to be there or not, right? Like you got to play the percentages if you want to be consistently good. And I think GGW has shown that.
I think GGW is a really good rando player. Like he's obviously good at execution. He has very strong execution, but he's not the strongest execution in the community. Like there's players that just have better execution, but I think he's one of the best at just like, I'm going to skip this. Yeah. And it might burn me and moving on. Like, and like he makes really good skip decisions.
Yeah. It's tough. It's like a science to it, but I don't know how you actually quantify it. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of have to play the percentages and kind of figure out the percentages in your head. And like, is it worth it at this point or not? And you never know. But,
granted, there is something to be said about the fact that some of those percentages are less obvious than might initially appear. It's like, like you might not realize that Skullwoods actually is much denser than 2 checks. It's closer to 7 because the key logic, or not the key logic, but the random logic is not good.
Yeah, that's where knowing the random logic can really come into your favor.
Yeah.
All right, let's get away from rando. Where did you start playing video games? Were you playing video games as a kid? I take it. Yeah. I don't know your age, but were you playing NES, Genesis?
I am 33. I had to refer to the year. I was playing as a kid. We had a Nintendo when I was very young, and I played it, but not very successfully. But we were, as was common at the time, like a generation or so behind in terms of the system. So like in like the later 90s, we got a mid later 90s, we got a Super Nintendo, and then like towards like 99 or something, got a 64. So like a half or so generation behind. But I was playing all the video games that that were the big ones from the childhood.
Sure. What were your favorites?
Mario's. It was probably Zelda.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Zelda, and especially Link to the Past. It's always been one of my favorite games.
So you were playing that a lot as a kid?
Yeah, me and my my brother and I were I remember one memory is we were trying to get through Desert Palace, and we just couldn't figure out that we needed to light the torches to get to Landmo. Like, it just didn't occur to us that was a thing that should happen.
Sure. Yeah.
We had to look it up online, which, back then was an effort.
Sure, you got to put the phone to the thing. You got to hit the dial up.
Well, we didn't even have, like, my family had a computer, but the computer with internet access was like controlled by my oldest brother, and like we had to like petition him to actually get it to look it up. And
that's hilarious.
He like made us pay in terms of like candy that we got weekly. Like, it was a whole thing.
Got to know how to get through desert though. So were you competitive since you had brothers? Were you playing a lot of like Mario Kart and GoldenEye and things that would be competitive?
So a little bit. By the time I got, old enough to be like competent holding a controller, so probably like 10, 11 or so. Like, my brothers were old enough that they sort of were hanging out together, but I was, the young kid. It wasn't really. It kind of got separated, but I was still competitive with my own friends. So like I would, my big game that I had played consistently competitively was Smash Brothers Melee. I'm like still vaguely playing that. Like I'm at the point where I'm very good at the game, but also feel terrible because I'm comparing myself to people who are very good at the game.
I see. So you could like whip your friends, but when it comes to like the broader community, worldwide community, you probably get smoked.
So my friends are now very, very good at the game. Because I got involved in the game. So like, I'm like okay against most of my friends, and I have one guy who's like probably going to be ranked top 100 this year.
Oh, geez.
And it got very demoralizing playing him.
Yeah, I bet. Damn, top 100 is sick.
Yeah, but like he's like not so much better than me that I can't play with him. So like that's sort of the point I'm at. I can't win a set against him. I like a 3-5 game set, 3 out of 5 game set. It won't happen. But like I can play with him still. So that's sort of my point.
Okay. Did you grow up in Washington State?
No, I grew up in Chicago and moved out here for work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so all this stuff is happening in Chicago when you're playing with your friends and.
No, all of these friends are from Washington.
Okay. So you didn't get into Smash Bros until later?
Yeah. I was just playing with my friend, with like whatever random friends I had, and I was whooping them when I was in college and earlier, and then they stopped playing with me because I was whooping them,
just kicking their ass. Yeah.
And when I came out here to Washington, I got involved with people who like took the game more seriously, and then some of them just continued to get better.
Sure.
And got much better than me.
That's awesome. Okay, so as a kid, how much is gaming affecting you? Are you playing a lot of games as a kid, or is it just sort of like a side hobby that you do for fun amongst whatever other interests you have?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of my main hobbies. Like, I was doing all sorts of things as a kid, going out, hanging out with friends, and playing around. But also, we would play games a pretty decent amount of the time we hanged out.
What about the systems as you got older then? Because you were a little bit behind, getting the 64 and stuff. Did you continue on with like Nintendo, or did you end up moving on to PC?
Yeah. So I played through GameCube, and then also moved on to play basically PC games. So I got way too far into RuneScape, then Diablo, and then World of Warcraft. And I've played a lot of World of Warcraft.
Like you had your own guild and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, at my peak, I was in a guild. I was leading the raid for we probably peaked around 10th US.
Holy shit. Okay. So like for real playing, not just like casually playing. Damn.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
It's mostly just a matter of how much time you invested in it. But I was,
Well, if you're getting 10th, that means you're investing a decent amount of time, right? Like you're not going to get there by just casually playing.
Yeah, no, it was especially back then. Like we were low on the time investment, and we were rating 20 hours a week. That's like the low end of what it took to be there. Like we looked at everyone else like, oh man, they raid so much more than us. It's like 20 hours a week. You look back at that, it's like, Jesus, that's so much.
Yeah, that's impressive though that you were able to raid, well, or do that the lower amount than everyone else and still be competitive. Gosh, so did that introduce you to like Twitch and streaming and stuff?
No, I mean I've always just like I don't even know when I discovered Twitch. It was one of the like I discovered Justin TV before that. It's just always a thing. Mm-hmm. Like it's just I don't know. It's one of those things where you're just on the internet too much, and so these things are just like
it just happens. Yeah. Like I don't remember the first time I viewed YouTube. Right, like it was there and you just kind of found it somehow. Google, like I don't remember the first time I used Google, but at some point I used it. It was there. So it's safe to say that you're pretty competitive then.
Yeah, I mean, I think that doing things somewhat competitively is an interest. Like you can't really enjoy the depths of a game unless you're going to take it seriously. And a good way of taking it seriously is to be competitive. Mm-hmm. Not the only way, but like that's sort of a strong motivator.
Mm-hmm. Was it just gaming or sports or any other sort of like competition?
Mostly just gaming for me.
Okay. Was there anything else besides Melee and World of Warcraft that you got competitive with?
No.
Okay.
No, I've never really dipped into any speedrunning at all before this. It's just I have a bad mentality for speedrunning where I just hate to continue a run that's not going to PB, and that's just bad.
Sure. You have to grind if you're going to get better at a speed run. And if you don't like the grind, then probably not going to work out.
Yeah.
So as you're getting older, do you still play casually like the Zelda series and some of the other things that you were interested in while you were growing up?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've played through every non-exiled Zelda game at least once. And then basically I would revisit Link to the Past like once every 2 or 3 years with no knowledge of any of the speedrun. And I would,
mm-hmm. Just because you enjoy the game.
Just because I enjoyed the game. And like at 2 or 3 years is enough for me to sort of forget enough that I could re-enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite of the series, or was it Breath of the Wild?
No, it's Link to the Past.
Yeah. Oh, did I say Breath of the Wild? Gosh.
You did say Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild of Brain. What's that? Gosh. I meant to say Link to the Past, but yeah, that's okay. So you're playing Melee, you're pretty competitive, not too competitive. You're playing WoW, getting really competitive. Where do you find then Link to the Past Randomizer?
Yeah, so I mean, I basically found it, we'll say secondhand compared to everyone's like firsthand from the GDQ run, where it's basically some of my friends. So I had a group of friends that I met through playing Melee that like we had done like we all like Link to the Past, and we all hung out one day and did like everyone is terrible, no one knows the speedrun. We're basically just playing the game. Like, we all didn't really remember the game. We just hung out and played it. Mm-hmm. And then like a year goes by and like someone mentions, oh, hey, the randomizer exists. This is a thing we could do instead. And it's like, I did a seed and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then, I don't know how the rabbit hole really got so deep, but suddenly I'm just doing multiple seeds. And then I'm like, oh man, watching Andy and like learning how to actually play the game and how to route things, at least like a vague intuition of that, playing more seeds and so on.
When is this?
This is probably like 2020.
Okay. So we're in the middle of the pandemic. Looking for stuff to do.
Yeah, so basically.
Yeah. So you find Link to the Past Randomizer and you start watching. It was Andy the first one that you watched? Or that you remember watching? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one to start with.
Yeah, Andy is incredibly good at the game. Like he's a great streamer, and he's also just like you watch him and you just like, well, if you're paying attention, you'll learn, all the dash lines that you need to learn and all the room strats and all the quick kills. And it's just, what a great resource just watching Andy is.
Sure. I don't want to pump him up too much, but yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
So you play seeds offline, right? You're just playing a couple different seeds to get through them. And then you start watching it. What's your path then into racing? Do you play seeds a bunch offline? Do you spend a lot of time just watching and absorbing? Do you start diving into the code?
I didn't touch the code until later. But basically my path to racing was, I initially wasn't really interested in racing for whatever reason. And I was just kind of hanging out, just playing seeds. And then I had another friend who was racing in OOT. And I'm like, oh, interesting. This guy's like successful in OOT racing. Maybe I could actually race in Link to the Past. I don't know why that's what decided to motivate me.
Correlation other than they're both Zelda.
But then I was like, I'll try it. I'll check it out. And I basically started doing shadow races against people on the ladder. So I would just download a ladder seed and play it and see what my times looked like and compare why I lost. And I started at I just would pick like a race for the day, and I'd start at the bottom and I'd download the seed. And then eventually I started beating the people that were racing at the bottom of the ladder matching that day. And I moved to like the middle-ish, and then I moved up further. And then once I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling kind of okay. I can probably, I have a chance of beating someone at like 1/3 down the list. Like I'm still for the top matchup, but like I'm probably okay to play a race or so. And I entered, and that was how I sort of just appeared without, appeared and wasn't terrible because I had just been playing a bunch offline.
How long was this?
I don't know.
For how long did you just play against do asyncs basically?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. It's pandemic timelines. Like everything just blurs together. I really have no idea.
Sure. So, but this is in the middle of 2020. Are you watching like main tournament league stuff, or are you just trying to get better at the game?
Yeah, I watched. So this is 2021 at this point, where I'm actually like vaguely aware of the competitive scene and such, and like have watched a decent amount of racing. And like I watched a little bit of main tournament 2021 and a little bit of league 2021. Mm-hmm. I wasn't that invested in it, but I do remember like there was one race that stood out to me, which was actually Obscure Lifeform went, and he can't even remember who he was racing, but like they were one item from go, and he had finished Hera, and instead of going and doing Paradox Cave, he just went and fluted over to Swamp and got his go mode there, and like was like 20 seconds behind and suddenly won the race because of it by like 30 seconds. I'm just like, that's so unintuitive to me. And I had to think a long time about, how you can reasonably skip Paradox Cave, Paradox and Hookshot Cave, and all, like entire East Death Mountain, one item from go mode.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did that work out?
It got its hooks in you though, because then you were then able to start thinking about the game in a different way, right?
Yeah. That's where that's like my first sort of like foray into like, oh yeah, skipping is a thing. Like it works if the answer isn't there, you're just saving time. That's that's true.
Sure. So when do you start actually dipping your toe into racing? Is it on the ladder?
Yeah, it's ladder. And my first race, I was just looking it up, was June 13th of 2021. Okay.
Did you win?
I did. I won my first 3 races.
Oh man, that had to feel good then, right? Coming off of especially just joining.
It felt very weird. So my first 2 of my first 3 races were both against Norsk Maddie, and I vaguely remember my first one just being complete luck sack. So it was good to go in with not just instantly losing. Mm-hmm. But
it looks like you didn't just like join Open Kaz Boots. It looks like your second race was Cross Keys and you won it.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of cross keys.
So
like,
right
from
away,
the moment I saw it, I was like, yeah, this is a more interesting mode.
Okay. So kind of tell me about your first, few months playing on the ladder. Did it feel like you were finding your footing? Did you feel like you were making progress?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I felt pretty good about everything that was happening. Like, I wasn't surprised by how I was performing, because like unless I vague or grossly misunderstood something, like I was already doing ladder races. I just wasn't getting credit for them.
Sure.
I probably should be. Like I just looking through the people I lost to, like I have a loss to Tam in there, and like the first 2 months I was like, yeah, I wasn't going to beat Tam at that point. Like,
yeah.
I was like, yeah, I was probably doing a little better than I thought I was going to, but nothing like, it didn't feel shocking to me.
Sure. I remember our first race on the ladder was in December of that year.
Yeah.
And I lost by like 11 minutes, looks like. And I remember going into the Discords with like GGW and Gamachi. I'm like, who the hell is Telethar? Like, what is this German runner doing? Where did he come from?
Yeah. I like to go look at where my opponent's at the end of the race and see their reaction. It's always fun to me. And I remember your reaction was, who the hell is Telethar? I know I haven't been like actively involved in the scene for a bit, but like, where did this guy come from?
Yeah.
Because I remember it was a PED seed too. And you're just like, how did I lose by 11 minutes on a PED seed?
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah, racing. I'm not good with racing just because I have an inflated ego when I race. And it's like, who am I to even think that I could be better or should be better than anyone? But I remember at that moment, I was like, holy crap, I got to take notice of this guy, because, you look at your record at the time and it's like, damn, this guy is actually really good. Where did he come from? I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, how did someone get good so fast when in actuality you were racing? You just weren't racing online. You weren't, you were doing acing stuff. So
yeah, this race or this game is very receptive to playing offline. Like, something like Melee, you basically have to be playing other people to actually learn the game. Whereas this one, the game is single player. Only the result is compared.
Right. So it's like golf, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm going to shoot my holes and you're going to shoot yours. And then I sound like a professional golfer here. And then whoever has the best wins, right? Like, it has no bearing on who did what other than how you performed. In Melee, though, like, you can't just play against the computer and get good, right? Like, you have to be playing against
it's completely useless. I mean, it's not completely useless, but it's
at a point it becomes useless though, right? Because you just know how to defeat the computer, probably no problem.
Yeah. I mean, it depends what the mindset you go in with and all that, but yeah, mostly like there's a lot of things you'll just learn that like computer cheese that like is completely irrelevant to a human.
Mm-hmm.
And also things that don't work against the computer might work against a human, because computers have perfect reactions to specific things where it's just like, yeah, I mean, that's not.
Yeah. Did you start entering tournaments? Did you enter the 2021 like main tournament or cross keys or any of that stuff?
I think my first tournament was the Doors tournament.
Doors?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Your first tournament was the Doors tournament. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then I entered cross keys of 2021. Yeah.
Okay. How did the Doors thing go? Like, at that time, I think Doors was still relatively newish.
Yeah, it went all right. I mean, I didn't make the bracket, but I had a good time.
Yeah. What was it about Doors? Because again, like, is it you just like to increase the difficulty of what you're played?
Yeah. I mean, I think that like the more complicated it is, the more opportunity you have for skill expression. Whereas like something like an open, there's a different skill expression for sure, but it also feels very get lucky based. Like you chose the right option or didn't.
Sure. So stuff like 80 keys, I take it is more in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Though I think that like the 80 keys is less interesting than a cross keys or a doors, because there's less opportunity for skill expression, I think, in general. Like there's just more or less just the one skill, which is just an efficient full clear routing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like cross keys is, you have to route on the fly, because it's different entrances every time, and there's a bunch of small decisions that can save you time and minimize risk.
I see. Did you start hanging out with, did you find a group of people? Because it feels like, I don't know who you hang out with or who you would say your people are, but did you find a community pretty quickly, or have you even found people to, hang out with?
No, so realistically, I didn't really find a community until like I was approached by Hitsu/GGW about joining their league team, and it's sort of just like, then I was hanging out with them, and then now I've been hanging out with some of the Europeans because my sleep schedule is degenerate.
Sure.
And like now I really feel like I've got a pretty good, like I'm in the community now, but like for a while there, it was just, I don't know, it felt, I'm very much not a reach out to people type of person. So like I didn't ever feel like the community was cold towards me or anything like that, but it's just like, I don't know, where I needed someone to reach out to me, and like,
sure,
that's less likely to happen until you have a reason to be reached out to. So like League really helped me for that.
How did GGW and Hitsu go about finding you? Like, were you guys racing against each other? I didn't know.
Yeah, I think it was Hitsu was like, well, they needed to replace Zero Rush. And I think Hitsu just like, because we had played each other on ladder quite a bit at that point. He's like, hey, this guy's teamless and good. We should grab him.
Yeah.
That was basically, I think, the extent of it.
Sure. Well, let's talk about that league season, because you've had one league season with the OK dudes.
Yeah, it went pretty well.
And I would say you had a pretty good season. It looks like you went overall 8-4.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tell me about your experience with the league.
I mean, the league was great. I'm like, I think I did fine. I think relative to winning the entire league, I didn't do great, in the sense that, like, especially towards the end, I just lost both of my 2 matches in the last sets, and my teammates carried me to victory.
Sometimes that's the way it works, though, right? Like
that is the way it works. I do think that I probably had the hardest matchups in those two pairings. I had to play Ramond into Airy, and like, so like those are probably the 2 hardest matchups in cross keys of the entire league.
Yeah. It looks like in the finals too against Airy, got a 139, and is that in cross keys?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's rough.
The match against Ramondo looked like it was pretty close.
Yeah, so in the match against Airy, he crushed me because there was mirror on pyramid, and I think I last located it, and it was just that was the end.
Yeah.
The Ramond one was super close. The deciding factor was who decided to go back and kill Pendant Helmosaur for an ice rod.
Oh, that's right. I might have been in comms on that one. Yeah.
I like located it last, I think, and he had like 2 checks left, and he beat me by like 2 checks worth of time. So I'm like, yeah, that's how it goes. Like,
yeah.
Can't be too upset about that.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about your co-op experience, because this was your first experience with co-op?
Oh yeah. My co-op experience was a disaster.
Really?
I think co-op is great. My first co-op race, I think, period, was the AD co-op with GGW, and I just melted down, and we lost that race because I melted down for no good reason. It was like a Dark Aga, and I got lost and died. And even though I've done Dark Aga like a million times, like it was Fire Rod Aga, it wasn't hard. But something about the whole being on co-op and like having someone else in my ear and just the entire thing, I melted down. So I felt terrible about that.
And plus it's GGW too. He's probably being an asshole.
Yeah, he was actually super nice about it, but he was definitely being an asshole. You can tell.
So you did, that was with GGW. Did you do any of the other co-op weeks?
I did the Retrons with Hitsu. twice or whatever we ended up doing it, and those were fun. It felt like we were constantly just lost, like a mix of Hitsu, like not Hitsu's like slight language barrier, plus not knowing the like he doesn't have a language barrier and that he can't speak or understand English at all. Like he's fine on those, but like he's like, yeah, I don't know any of the entrances, like by name. Like I have no way to refer to these entrances. I'm like, okay, we'll see how this goes.
How did you guys do?
We won all of our we won all of our co-ops.
And that was against the Beats from the East too, so it wasn't like a free matchup either.
Yeah, no, it was. We did pretty well there. It was very, it was very hectic. Our co-ops,
I imagine. Yeah,
but then we just like it was a lot of. It was very silly too. It's just like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna skip this. I'm like, all right, that's fine. Let's go. And like Hitsu made a bunch of interesting calls that all worked out very well.
That's Hitsu.
Yeah.
So you guys go 12-2 in the regular season, it looks like, and like clearly win your division. The next closest was WJPDTB at 8-6. So you guys kind of coasted into the playoffs. So that had to feel pretty good. You get into the round one. You guys go. It looks like 3-1. I think something happened with Hitsu where he got sick or something. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, Hitsu. I don't even remember what it was, but he had to forfeit his match. So it was a 3-1 with an asterisk.
Yeah,
like it was a we will play this match out if it needs to happen, but if it doesn't need to happen, it's just a forfeit.
Yeah,
and so then I think I played and. Yeah, we just didn't need to do the third match because the fourth match was a win anyway.
So you beat I keep saying Telethar. You beat Radical Sniper. You beat Kaysden, and then it looks like GW beat Kaysden. Then you get to Don't Forget to Track Us, and just a clean sweep there. Feeling pretty good. Then you come up against the Divine Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
What we're going into games 3 and 4 with Gamma versus GGW. Did you expect GGW to win both of those? Or were you preparing for a game 5? Because I was prepared. I thought for sure we were going to game 5.
Yeah, I mean, I was winning both of them is a very fortunate performance from GGW. Like I expected a game 5 probably. It's the most likely result is that we're not going to be able to get a 2-0 there.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost to Rahman, so I'm like, yeah, ready for this to go to the co-op, and I just didn't.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised.
I was a little afraid of you guys in co-op.
Yeah,
but
I really wanted to play that co-op match. I really, really wanted to play it. And then you guys go against the Pugs in the finals, and you had the one loss, and then again GGW just with the carry.
Yeah, that's like if you look at this, it's the exact same story twice over. Is my teammates won and I lost, and then we didn't have to go to co-op.
Yeah,
that's why it just feels a little bad because like my first league season, it's like I won, but it feels more like my team won.
Yeah, but that's the whole point of doing team stuff is you get to ride with however your team performs, and if they perform better than you, it's not like you were a total dead weight. Like you have a lot of wins, so it's random.
For sure. I just would have liked to have, been an important factor in winning at the end.
Sure,
as opposed to like literally anyone could have filled in that spot and we still would have won those 2 sets.
Sure, for sure. So how were you feeling? Was this your first championship or win of a tournament?
I'm trying to remember. So I had also won the Casual Boots 80 keys, and I think that was just after this.
Yeah.
So yeah, this would have been my first tournament win.
And then the Cas Boots. That was against Hitsu, right?
Yeah, the finals was against Hitsu, and he was sufficiently impaired that he made some unintended skips.
Sure.
So those were fun matches, but
I still can't believe I lost to Hitsu in the playoffs, by the way. Like he died to Aga 1, man, and I still lost. I just couldn't believe it. I made the one skip and it cost me.
Yeah. That was rough.
That was so rough. Okay, so you've been doing a lot of tournament stuff. Like you've been in the main tournament. It feels like you're taking a part of pretty much all of the tournaments as they're coming.
Yeah.
I take it you enjoy the tournament grind?
Yeah, I think the tournaments are fun. I don't know. I like having some sort of stakes in when I play. It's like it's not the biggest deal, but like it's still,
it's something.
It makes the heart beat faster.
Sure. The rush that comes with playing a tournament race is definitely fun. What about, like, again, you're still relatively new to the scene, considering you've only been playing for a couple of years now, but has there ever been any thought of, I say this not in jest, council or running a tournament or moderating or any of those things?
So I did apply to the council just before, it got dissolved.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't know how, like, I applied to the council, but my application to the council was when there was a section that's, why do you want to be on the council? And then I looked at that for a while and I'm just like, God, what am I supposed to put here? Like, and I eventually just said, screw it, and put, I want to be on the council because I tend to agree with my opinion more often than anyone else's.
Great reason. Great reason.
So that's all I put there. And I was like, yeah, they probably won't take me, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't need to be on the council, but
sure.
Also the people on the council are familiar with me enough that like they know my temperament and my the fact that I'm fairly level-headed and rational about my decisions. So like if they want, I'm there. If they don't want, I don't care.
Sure. And now we have no idea what is even going to happen, right? Like,
yeah, no, absolutely no idea.
It's all up in the air, and we'll see what happens. One thing that I do know that you enjoy, at least being a part of the community, is helping out with the logic stuff, like the big push for 100% locations in both cross keys and AD keys. I feel like comes from you.
Yeah,
I mean, talk to a little bit about how that came about and your feelings on that.
I mean, it's one of those things where like multiple times people have like it's come up in a conversation. It's like, yeah, key lock keys suck. Like, and everyone's like, yeah, I agree. It's like not fun to deal with, and you like there was sort of a confluence of things. I think one of the like main motivators for me was I was watching Gamma do a race, and he had two keys. Like he like was like, oh yeah, nothing's left except for unless there was two keys, lock keys in pod. Both of the 6 key lock chests were keys, and I was like, wow, that's so dumb.
It is dumb. Yeah.
He had to go back to pod on 4 keys for the big chest or something like that for his progression, because the Harmless Hellway and big key chest were both keys. And I was like,
that's so ridiculous. That's so ridiculous. Yeah.
Great. And like, I was just discussing this, and people like, yeah, it sucks. I'm like, why don't we just not instead? Like, what is the reason we're on this on 100% locations? Like, who wants this? And then I just brought it up in racing talk. It's like, hey, what if we just didn't? And obviously I have no actual, no power or influence, but Allison was like, that's a great point. What if we just didn't? And then said, okay, cross keys is going to be 100% locations instead.
The simplicity of it, I think, is what's interesting, right? Like, we've been doing this for 5 plus years, right? Maybe keys not as long, but quite some time. And I don't feel like anyone has ever brought that up. No one's talked about, hey, why don't we just do 100% locations? Like, it's such a simple fix, and yet here, how long did it take to get there?
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, what if we just didn't? Oh, that's true. Why not?
So you like to, at least now, look at the code and kind of figure out a lot of the logic. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Are you a coder? Is that something you do for a living? Okay.
Yeah. Software engineer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like pulling up the code, like, it's not the most complicated code. So it's pretty easy to look at. And from the logic is pretty straightforward to read, especially in like the VT branch. It's very much just like one big if statement that you look at and it's like, oh yeah, that's what this is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And like, most of it is pretty straightforward. There's been some fun things like the V31.1 change with the Meyer small keys. That was also because I was like, hey, this is wrong. Like,
I didn't even know what that is.
In V31, on the left side, if the Meyer big key is there, say the Meyer big key is vanilla, then the compass chest is in logic on 2 keys.
The compass chest is the one that's on the left side as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's in V31, the compass chest is in logic on 2 keys, but the big key itself is not in logic on 2 keys.
But that doesn't make any sense.
It does not make any sense.
Okay. So you brought that up. So
I brought up that makes no sense, and they changed it for V31.1, which changes Meyer routing quite a bit.
Because then it now locks both of those checks behind all 3 keys.
No. They're locked behind 2 keys.
Oh,
when the big key is on the left side, it's locked behind 2 keys.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you find the big key in, like, say, the compass chest now, or for either one of them, you only need 2 keys to get to them, regardless of the mode. Okay.
Right, because the last key door is in the basement. So, like, they already had that key logic. It's just that they
only applied it to one.
It only applied to the not big key chest.
That's weird.
Whichever chest didn't have the big key was in logic, but the big key itself was not.
Okay.
So it was a weird behavior where it's like you need to actually like look at the code and be like, hey, wait a second.
Mm-hmm. So what else is broken with this game? What else can you sell?
What else is broken? Ice Palace right side is broken. That one's actually still broken. It is supposed to be hookshot locked unless the big key is locked behind the right side. But like that check is actually not correct, as in like it doesn't work. Basically, if you get logical access to the Ice Palace big key when inside of Ice Palace, so like you walk into Ice Palace and the first chest is a pod small key, and that pod small key locks the Ice Palace big key. Mm-hmm. Then the right side is considered still in logic, even though you can have the big key in hand, and therefore it should be hookshot locked. It's a little bit busted.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So are they going to fix that one, or is that just wait and see?
Unclear.
Yeah.
Unclear. What else is broken? Ice Armos is in logic on 3 keys via the left side. Even if you don't have the fire rod to recover your key from the right side.
Well, how are you supposed to do that then without if you don't have the fire rod? Just sequence break it?
Well, I mean, don't open the middle door.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But yeah.
But you could accidentally open. I mean, the whole point of the logic is you shouldn't be able to lock yourself out, right? Like,
yeah, correct. If you've opened the middle door and you've opened the right side door and then realized you don't have the fire rod and you've done the climb, you can be locked out of the game because you can't go left side because you're out of keys, so you can't get to Rando Room and Ice Armos, and you can't go to right side because the fire rod is on Ice Armos.
Okay.
So like that's
but that's unlikely, right? Like that one's a little bit more unlikely because nobody really ever opens that middle door.
Correct. No one ever opens that middle door. So it doesn't actually matter.
Sure.
That's probably why they didn't bother fixing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And then key logic is just the whole dungeon bias is a real thing because the randomizer code is not very random.
Explain.
Oh, this one's gonna be too much to really explain, but basically,
well, explain it like I'm a first grader. Then, like, you don't have to give me everything.
Yeah. The way the randomizer works is it shuffles all the locations, then it puts keys from the top, and then it puts items from the bottom of the list.
Okay.
And so dungeons that have like Skull Woods, for example, which has 8 checks in it, is almost weighed as having 8 items in it, even though it only gives you 2 items. Simply because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there's only 2 items in it. What matters is how many checks are on the bottom of the list. And the more chests there are in the dungeon, the more likely that something is on the bottom of the list.
Okay. So does that play into like the whole Dunka theory that always check Skull Woods? Okay. Okay,
yeah,
that makes sense.
like that's the math behind that theory. That I think the math actually came second. I think that this was just a strong intuition from people, and like sometimes that gut intuition is correct, and like there is a reason behind it, and like like you might look at Skullwoods and be like, oh, it's only 2 items. I don't want to do that. It's slow. It might not be, but like no, like Skullwoods is actually very dense. It just doesn't feel like it. It just doesn't show it on the
Sure.
your tracker.
Okay, that's super interesting. So clearly, you're a smart dude. The rando community is a little bit in shambles. I use that. I use that vaguely.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, everything's fine.
Everything's absolutely fine. Yeah.
I mean, nothing's really changed since the council got dissolved. And they're trying to figure out what to do going forward. What do you do
with the rando community?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that the old council is mostly fine, but I would probably just make everything a little more public. Like I don't think that I think having polls of the community is great for informative purposes. I don't think having everyone or like letting everyone decide all the rules as a community is going to work out great. I think that there is
a hodgepodge was what happens.
Yeah. But like I think that just basically having a council that people respect and that people respect the opinions of, and then just having them make their decisions be like, this is why we decided, this is why, like I reference like the Supreme Court, the dissenting opinion, the majority opinion, whatever those are called, and just like making those known. Like I think that's fine. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the council decides. We just need a rule set. Like my experience in the game is going to be almost the same with or without Specky statue. Like, sure. I'd like it there, but like I don't care.
It's not that big of a deal, right? Like,
yeah, the people who made it out to be a big deal, like I don't understand. No one should think it's a big deal either way. It's like it's not going to matter.
Sure. Are you cool with the rule set right now? Because again, everyone's kind of like, oh, this is what I would change, or that's what I would change.
Yeah, I would change a bunch of things.
Like what?
I don't like hovering. I can hover, but I just think it's not it's not healthy for the game, so to speak. Like it kind of sucks when you lose to a hovering seed. Like I think maybe hovering is fine in Hookshot Cave and so on and so forth, but I would probably just get rid of the bounce and hover at the end of the game.
So you're allowed to hover except Moldorm 2?
Probably.
Okay.
I would probably get rid of Icebreaker because it basically neuters Ice Palace, and like that's unfortunate. That dungeon just became like if you have Samaria, it's like you just go to Ice Palace. It's really quick and it's free, and like I don't know, that dungeon just is so neutered with Icebreaker.
It removes the decision of like, oh, should I do Ice Palace now or not? Because it's so fast now.
It's super fast. It's like very straightforward, and you can always get all the chests. It's just like, I don't know. It just makes it, and like it also removes some of the hardest rooms in that dungeon.
Sure. Bring back the Ice Palace bomb jump, everyone. 2024.
Yeah, the bomb jump and the hallway or the platform itself that's moving. I'll make that room way harder, or make that dungeon way harder to be quick at.
Sure. Cool.
I'm a big fan of things that people can gain or lose time on from execution purposes. Like those should probably not be removed from the game.
What about Hammer Yump?
Yeah, Hammer Yump stays just because pod six key pod sucks.
It does. It really does.
Like having to it already sucks with saving a key. If you had to like actually get the 6 keys in order to do all the checks, it would just be so annoying, and you'd lose whenever you lose a race because like you chose wrong between the 50-50. It just would be so much more frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. Where are you at with the randomizer? Again, you're relatively new compared to a lot of people that I've had on the show. Are you in a good spot? Are you enjoying the game? Do you feel like you're going to be enjoying the game for a while?
Yeah. I mean, I probably have been playing more than I probably will scale back my playing a little bit, but like I don't foresee myself stopping playing in the near future.
Yeah.
But like, I've entered a lot of tournaments recently, and I probably have played a little too much very recently. But
it's hard to skip out on some of the fun tournaments, though.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm good where I'm at, more or less.
Are you going to play League? I know GGW's probably out. Are you going to try to form a team this year?
Yeah, I'm probably. I will, unless I somehow don't manage to find people. I will play League this year.
I would be surprised if you didn't find people to play with. Like if you need someone that's good to play with, and you're pretty good, I imagine there's a big group of people out there that would qualify. So I'd be surprised.
Yeah, so I'll probably join.
All right, tilt question. I've watched you do runs every once in a while. I know you don't do NMG. You did do the NMG League though, right? That was your first time running NMG.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Poorly.
It's tough, right? NMG is tough. It's just so different. It
is tough. Yeah, I did not have a single clean run. So like I didn't practice enough, so it's on me. Like I'm not surprised, but like I did 4 runs. The qualifier had 3 races, and all of them were bad.
Yeah, so it's just tough.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I've watched you, you've handled tilt pretty well. And through our conversation, it feels like you handle tilt well. But how do you handle tilt? Whether it's in the middle of a seed where you last locate something, or at the end of a seed when you occasionally lose?
At the end of a seed, I'm usually pretty fine with it. Like I'll get salty or whatever, but like not so much at my opponent. Just like, yeah, that sucks. Like the tilt that I get is mostly just at myself for like not having good execution and decision making. Like it's like, yeah, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Like, and I will get tilted to like things sort of spiral for me sometimes. Like every once in a while, you'll see a seed where I'm just like playing like garbage and it just like spirals. And that's just bad mental game, which I try to work on, but
that's natural, right? Like getting upset with yourself, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It's really how you react to it. And it feels like, I don't know, again, you can speak on this. It feels like you handle it pretty well for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think I have some consistency issues in terms of like where I will let things spiral. Where like if I'm not playing well, I will start playing worse, which will feed into itself.
Okay.
But I usually can keep that. Like that usually doesn't affect me, but like 1 in 50 seeds or whatever, it's just like, yeah, that was just a complete disaster. Like, how did I let that happen?
That's a pretty good statistic, though.
Sure.
1 out of 50 is not bad to get tilted.
Sure.
Yeah.
But also, I probably shouldn't have a miniature execution meltdown in 1 in 50 seeds. Like, if I could just not, that'd be great. I don't need to. It doesn't matter about winning and losing. It's just like I just want to play my game.
Yeah, you want to do your best.
Yeah, like I lost to in my first of 3 games versus Jesse and AD Keys earlier this week, and like I was really happy because that's probably the best I've ever played in a seed. I just happened to be later to Castle Tower Key by 40 checks.
Right. Yeah,
that is what it is. But I was really happy with the seed.
I think that speaks something, right? Like you lost, you understand why you lost, and yet you still performed well. I don't know. I think that's a lot of people could take something away from that because
I mean, at the end of the day, it's rando. You're going to lose matches.
Right.
So it's just a question of if you feel good about your execution decisions.
Right. You have to play your game, be cool with how you played your game, or, know that you need to work on something and then let the results be what they are.
Yeah,
for sure. So how many more championships you got in you in the next 12 months? Going to get another league title, maybe main tournament champion. Got cross keys going on now as well. So at least 3 more rings to add to the finger.
Yeah, seems unlikely. We'll see. I would love for the cross keys championship, and I doubt I'm going to get it because there's a lot of very good players.
It's so hard, man. It's so hard to get to the top 16 even.
Yeah. I'm now 3-1 and terrified of the next 4 weeks.
Oh, do you know who your next opponent is?
I don't think they've announced next week's opponents now.
Okay.
So
I would be surprised if you won because of how good you are at this game. It's it's been impressive, man. Like it really has. Like, sorry, I tilted out on you the first time.
Yeah, all good.
Like, who the fuck is this guy? But
especially when I was first coming up, one thing I like to think about is how many people were like, cheater ?
Yeah, totally. That's
which like it's fair.
Yeah, like who the heck is this guy? Why is he so good so quickly? Again, not knowing that the time that you put in outside, sure. Like I was never called a cheater, and that just speaks to the quality of my game. So I wish they'd called me a cheater back then.
No one has said it to my face, at least.
That's good. But yeah, I've loved having you in the community. I love having you part of the community, and the knowledge that you bring, I think, has just been invaluable. Like, you might not realize it, but you're impacting things in a really positive way, even if it's the little things like the 100% locations that we all should have known in the first place. But those are real positives that affect a lot of people, and it's been really cool to have you a part of the community.
It means a lot. Thank you. I mean, 216, much more obvious, nice, big impact, but it means a lot for you to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for doing the show, man. I'll try to keep your name out of my mouth more often. I'll do the Will Smith, keep my wife's name out of my mouth. I'll try to keep Telethar out of my mouth when I'm talking. But you're just so good, and I feel like you're almost like you set the bar so high that I compare all new people to you, and it's probably not fair to those new people, but you got to come in hot like Telethar, man. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Big shout outs to Telethar for coming on the show. Really appreciate having him, and I'll try to keep his name out of my mouth. I'm just kidding. I'm going to be talking about Telethar a lot in the future, just because he's going to continue to win. He's a really good runner and plays really smart. His execution's constantly improving, and is going to be around, winning. So this was going to close out season 4, and then we were just going to jump into season 5. I see no reason to close out season 4, and if we're just going to jump right into season 5, like, what's the point? So season 4 continues. Next week on the show, got Zen Arcane. Holy smokes. You definitely want to come back for Zen Arcane. I had so much fun talking to Zen, and man, just a good dude. And it was really cool to get a chance to know him a little bit more. It definitely took too long to get him on, but I'm super, super glad to have him on the show next week. So make sure you come back for that. We have a really good time. I've already done a couple more interviews with some more people, and the rest of season 4 is going to be fire. So stick around for that. Yeah, not a lot's going on with me. Just chilling, having a good time. Really enjoying the podcast. Really enjoying the rando community. Really curious to see what happens with Tark. Glass half full. That's how I'm approaching this all. Glass half full. Faith in the community. All right. That's going to do it for this show. Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. We're available everywhere. If you could leave a review either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it helps the show out. This helps get our SEO stuff up, really. And I'm not really good at doing any of that stuff. So if you could help me out, that'd be helpful. I don't have any social media platforms where I promote the show. That's not going to change just because I'm not crazy about social media. Join the Discord. 216pod.com has the links. Lots of fun conversation going on over there, especially with football season about to start. Major League Baseball playoffs are about to start in a month or so, and there'll be a lot of conversation about that when that happens. Really hoping the M's are able to sneak their way in. Yeah, come have fun in the Discord. I think that's going to do it. Again, come back next week for Zen Arcane. Really appreciate you all listening. See you next time.